All right, hello everyone. Happy Thursday. We typically do this on Tuesdays, David, but you've of course been very busy, so we moved this to Thursday. But I'm your host, Greta Wall. I'm here with David Prince, the leader of T3 Live's Inner Circle virtual trading floor for our weekly market check-in. There's a lot going on. David's been very busy, but how's your day going so far today, David?
My day is going good. I'm half asleep, but the day's busy, so it's keeping me up. I'm just overworked, but otherwise, no complaints. All is good.
Okay, so our topic today is the kickoff of Q3 earnings season, and we've seen some big moves from some of the earnings that we've gotten so far, namely being Taiwan Semiconductor last night and the impact on the chip space. We'll also talk about what else David has been doing outside of earnings season. But let's start off again with TSM. I have the ticker wrong there. Apologies, but it's TSM, Taiwan Semiconductor. That their earnings beat. They beat on the top bottom line last night, raised guidance as well. CEO says AI demand is real, and quote, almost every AI innovator is working with Taiwan Semiconductor. That's boosting the broader chip space today. Inner Circle took advantage of those moves this morning with lotto calls on Nvidia. I know, David, you were also active in the stock as well, but nearly 100% gain on these lotto calls before Nvidia gave up some gains later in the session. What's your reaction to the earnings and what it's doing to the chip space?
Okay, well, I think ASML, I think a lot of us knew, and I wrote about this, ASML, we're probably reacting to it too much. It's not the end all when it comes to semis. Taiwan Semi, it's like the difference between, a giant and a very small person. It's just one is far more important. So we can first assume there is not some huge problem in the semiconductor arena. Taiwan Semi solidifies that. We also know that the AI business within the semiconductor arena is as strong as it's ever been. And to quote the CEO, his clients can't keep up with demand. Supply is not meeting demand, which, as we all know, is him talking about Nvidia. So the first thing is, as a macro story, it's not like it's over. Some people wanted to extrapolate a whole story like ASML is the tip of the iceberg and the world's ending. The world's not ending. ASML has some issues, but the world's not ending. I think it'll definitely be a stock picker's market within semis. You can't just buy them all, but it definitely bolsters the whole semi theme. And you can see Micron traded great today. Obviously, Nvidia's traded well, although it's having problems making a new high and continuing higher. TSM didn't only open higher, but unlike the previous quarter where it sold off, it opened higher and continued higher. And some of these, let's face it, versus the market aren't that expensive given their growth rate. So I think it's a good backdrop. It's like no one can really pick apart too much. It's a solid quarter. It tells you that Nvidia, listen, without Taiwan Semi, Nvidia doesn't produce chips. So basically they told you Nvidia is going to have a great quarter today. Like you don't have to be particularly smart to figure that out. So it's hard to, say anything negative. You just got to understand we've come a long way. So you can't just buy stocks at their highs and hope they go higher. That's probably the biggest thing one has to take into account, right? The Qs were lower. Nvidia was lower. Taiwan Semi was lower. Micron was lower. All these stocks have moved a lot. So maybe be price conscious, but understand the story is very much intact. The fundamentals remain as strong as they've been.
What does this mean for Nvidia's earnings report?
It means a beat
report
and
in
raise.
like 3 weeks, a month?
Almost 4 weeks away, I think. It means a beat and raise quarter, without a doubt. It's just, it would be very mathematically difficult. Something would have to have changed a great deal if Nvidia is not about to beat and raise. And trading at forward, I don't know, let's go 32, 33 times. Given their growth rate, it's hard to call it an expensive stock, right? Of course, there are going to be people who say normalization is going to come in. And if you look out 2 years, this is grossly expensive, all that. But for now, Nvidia is not an expensive stock given their growth rate and given that they lead the universe when it comes to the most important theme we've seen in decades. So I think it means that eventually we're having problems at 140. I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid with the charts. Everyone thinks the next major area on this breakout, when you figure out the numbers, 180, 182. That's what a lot of charters have. I'm going like 150 to 160, right? And partially that's because you could have bought it till you're blue in the face between 91 and 97 just back in this past August. When one of the biggest companies in the world is up over 50% in a couple months, you gotta kind of assume it might slow down, no matter how good the news is, right? Law of large numbers. So I think higher, I think new highs, but I also think like you can slow down with thinking 180 comes right away. Those are my thoughts on Nvidia and semis.
When it comes to the other earnings we've gotten so far, is of course the beginning of earnings season. So financials were the big focus at the beginning. We got JP Morgan Chase and Wells Fargo last Friday. This Tuesday, Bank of America, Goldman Sachs, and Citigroup. And then today, Morgan Stanley. What's been your reaction to the financial sector so far and how these companies have reported and then performed after those reports?
I wasn't that excited about the numbers. I think I listened to Jamie Dimon too much. I wrote on Twitter, I'm going to stop listening to Jamie Dimon. He plays the street and me so well. I'm sick of it. He basically, under promises and over delivers. That's what he does. He's really good at it. And it had me kind of hesitant. I didn't bet against them, but it had me hesitant to play many of them. Rick played Goldman Sachs and many people on the chat did well. I think it was like a 20-point move and he boxed his options and, shorted the stock pre-market. So here's what I'll say. Morgan Stanley probably is the outlier in a good way. Like they stepped it up, right? It's been lagging and really had some issues it had to deal with. It stuck out in a really good way and made up for it on the size of the move yesterday. I haven't seen Morgan Stanley move like that in quite some time. It's a stock to focus on pullbacks. I would say I've been subpar in my thoughts on financials. I didn't really take part in earnings season, but I recognize earnings season's been great. Across the board, you really can't pick apart too much. Wells Fargo was actually pretty good too. And that's Wells Fargo. They always have issues. So across the board, really good earnings season on financials. And as long as the rate story, we continue to get cuts and the IPO market opens up, it's hard to bet against it. I'd buy them on pullbacks. Am I excited here? No. Do I want to rush out and buy any of them? Probably not. But like always, there'll be a pullback and they'll probably all be buyable. I'll focus on Morgan Stanley.
All right. The big earnings, the first big tech earning to come up is coming up today. Netflix reports earnings after the close. So this is a look at the chart since the August 5th low. So grinding higher, but nothing insane on the move. What are your thoughts on Netflix headed into this report? You and Inner Circle have had, big trades on Netflix post earnings in the past. Are you holding anything into the report? Are you planning to analyze and play it after? What's your plan?
We all have kind of our little edge. I would say my edge is just being old. And after 30 years of this, I can usually read an earnings report. And if there is a trade to be made, we don't force it, but if there's a trade to be made, like these numbers are much better or margins are much better and the market's not pricing it in, we should be long. Oh my God. They just talked about literally cutting out sub numbers. So you're not going to see sub growth anymore. They want you to look at it as an earnings story. Like the day they said that, right? I said, listen, long-term, that doesn't mean anything. Short-term, it's like Apple. That's a horrible, horrible negative. The street's going to hit the stock and we shorted the hell out of it and went down like another 80 points. So the answer is we'll play it after the print. I have no real gut. They won the streaming wars. No one can touch them. We don't even talk about the streaming wars anymore because they're over. Netflix won. It's a mature company. Advertising model is doing fine, but it's not like gangbusters. So it's hard to be excited, but I wouldn't bet against it either. It's earning money and become a very real company that throws off cash flow. It's just hard to be excited or negative. So I'm as neutral as you get into the print. I think it's expecting, something like 60 points last I checked. I have to check, but I think it's something like 60 points. I don't feel like I have an edge, so I will play it after the print if I think the market is not responding to the earnings as it should, long or short. Really, so I'll be a trader, not an investor, after the print today.
All right, great. All right, let's talk about what you've been doing in the Inner Circle this week. On Tuesday, you participated in a Twitter Spaces event with some other traders, Jake Woojistic, I think it's how you pronounce it,
We
and
just call him
banana,
Jake.
Jake and
Make it
banana.
easy.
Yep. Yeah. And on that spaces, you had a great call on Apple, and you bought Apple calls in the room as the stock was trading up to, and then of course did surpass later in the day all-time highs. What was the story with Apple on Tuesday? What you were seeing with the stock, and what made you buy these calls?
Real fancy stuff. It was 3 points from all-time highs. It was a very strong note out, but the note came from something a little more important. It was Apple Insider versus another firm, or like a day and Ives, just saying, "Hey, I love Apple, and I'm bullish into the print." It was Apple Insider basically saying, "Hey, sales are pretty strong. It could be a record third quarter." And I thought, you know what? We're too close to highs. How do you not take a shot, risk reward with calls? Volatility is not too insane. It's early in the week, so it gives us a little bit of time. And I bought calls not far away, so if it worked big. I bought the 235 calls, and they went up like 80%. And I don't know, 10, 20 minutes. I sold most, held a teeny bit, and now that's back down, and those will be a loss. But it went up like almost 100% in short order, so it was a fun one. But it was really just a function of the stock being so close to all-time highs. Great note, and more as opposed to creating some fancy concept I came up with. It was, hey, 2 and 2 here might equal 8 instead of 4. Let's go with it. Let's buy calls. It all set up perfectly. So I don't like to overtrade. So if I see a great setup that makes sense, I go after it. So we went after it.
You are on record many times saying you expect outperformance of IWM and XBI into the end of the year. You trade XBI often.
Mm-hmm.
You can see from this chart, you were buying XBI on Friday around like $96 and then selling your ads Monday right around 100. You're very active in this space. Of course, we know about the immunome story and your expectations for XBI headed into the year. Has any of that changed for you here in October as we approach November, December?
I was a little surprised that it started so early. I think that might have been a function of where we are in the polls for the presidential election. We started to see small caps trade better, and thus XBI, because they are kissing cousins and trade together. Overall, I mentioned Monday that I thought it was time to start focusing there. I didn't know what week, but on that space, as I said, there's going to be outperformance. It's going to be small caps and biotech. And sure enough, all week prior to today, it's been all about small caps. There's just such a discrepancy in valuation because there's been such leadership from large cap. So I thought one of these days it starts. You never know when it does. If you try and time it exactly, you'll miss the whole trade. So I got lucky and looked smart for a minute. And, all week the leadership has been small caps and bio. Bio, I would say maybe slight underperformance. It's been all about IWM and kind of XBI behind it. But hey, it still went up a lot. My thought is November is that kind of perfect time where animal spirits come out. IWM is well above 228. I am not looking for 300, more like a 240 number. XBI breaks through 103 and is somewhere between 110 and 120. To create alpha, I'm still going to constantly, instead of focus on the indexes, like XBI has been fun, but I really think the alpha is going to come from smaller stories, as we've seen this week. Nuclear went crazy. Satellite went crazy. It's individual names at the right price. For me, it was fintech for the past month between Upstart and Affirm. And I'm going to keep going back to kind of sector themes within the small cap space. It's working. I mean, Inner Circle did, not just Inner Circle, the whole street made a fortune on nuclear yesterday as all these silly stocks went nuts. So I think the indices do fine, but I think people shouldn't get caught up in trying to catch them, because their real outperformance will probably come from buying some of the stocks within those indices.
Yeah, you've talked a lot recently about how you're finding alpha under the hood on the indices. So, you're buying individual names. You're not buying huge sectors. You're not buying large ETFs that follow sectors. Talk a little bit about that under the hood theme for you in your trading.
The way I look at it is kind of really simplistic. If I'm to make 20% in the Qs, let's just pretend they're at 500. They're not now, but let's just say they were at 500. So to make 20%, what does it have to do? It has to go up 100 points, right? Now, I think most people in this business that are savvy traders that have been around could probably make 20% in a stock far easier than figuring out whether the Qs are going up 100 points, right? It's really that simple. They also may be able to find something where they don't have to dedicate as much money than a $500 instrument. So what I'm looking at is each quarter going through the earnings, who beat, who missed, who maybe is not pricing in the good news, and building positions in these stocks. So for me, last quarter, I saw how strong fintech was. I was aggressive of firm as low as 36, a lot at 38, and we rode most of it till 48.50 a few times because it's been a few pullbacks in between. Upstart, we just did the very same thing from about 41-ish to, I sold early like a bozo, but I sold at 50. The point is, still a bigger move percentage-wise than if you bought the Qs yesterday at, say, it was 500 and it went up 100 points. That's where you're going to make real money. People bought Affirm calls with us, bought Upstart calls with us that went up multiple hundreds of percent. So I'm looking under the hood for quality names that just beat or this quarter will have new earnings to figure out where's my risk reward set up better than just hoping IWM goes up 20% over the next few weeks. Because when IWM works like this, so many more stocks work, right? We don't have to just buy. Although everyone knows I love Nvidia and I buy it every day, you don't have to rely on it as much for alpha. So when this happens, I mean, there were people buying this Oklo in Inner Circle at $10 the other day, and it was 16 yesterday. So, I mean, it was up like 50%. When those types of moves happen, you can make your month, you can make your summer, you can make your fall. So it's important not to miss those because you're so focused on the indices themselves.
When it comes to those types of trades, you and the Inner Circle often use options to, amplify gains. Right. This morning you were buying and trading stock in Nvidia as well, but you were also buying those 140 calls.
That's a good example.
Gives you a lot more, a much larger move in maybe a short amount of time for a lot smaller of an investment up front than buying the $130, $8 stock itself, right?
So this morning I told people, listen, Nvidia probably is going to make a new high based upon this news. The fact that we washed out so many sellers, like we were aggressive buyers just the other day when it had that flash crash to 128.90 or something. We bought like a lot under 130. But it also reminded you, like, there were a lot of sellers out there that got scared out. So I said to people, listen, I think Nvidia should hit a new high today, but it's not an easy buy. Like, it is not easy. I said, quote, it's much easier buying it at 129 the other day when it's crashing than thinking just because of TSM, it's going to go high. So if you have a big book and you're not worried about small moves here and there, it's fine to own some stock here. I own stock, from many points ago that I'm still long, but I said, if you want to buy stock, buy stock. But the better trade is we get a harsh pullback off the open because let's face it, if I was buying it at 129, so were a bunch of other people. A couple days later, they're up over 10 points. What are the odds they're going to sell some, and what are the odds we pull back? Sure enough, we pulled back. It wasn't like comfortable. I don't want to pretend it was comfortable, but the plan was if it pulls back, that's where we have an edge. And that's where calls, especially short-term ones, might pay us. So the minute it pulled back and got to 138, I started buying the 140 calls for Friday. The high I paid was 130. The low I paid was like $1.05. And then, of course, we trim and trail. I think I sold, I'm going to go with 70% by $1.70, held the trailer till like 2, and I still have a teeny bit left. But that's how we take advantage of those sort of aggressive pullbacks if we feel that we have an edge. Hey, don't go full size, leave some room. If there is that seller, which came about, we can probably take advantage of it. Instead of buying just a little bit of stock at 138, we can probably make a lot more than what appears to be just 2 points via the options. So we did options and it worked out.
Great. On that Spaces on Tuesday, you also talked about how you and the Inner Circle are trading with themes and focusing on themes. One of those themes has been Chinese names. And you can see here on, so the 15th was what, 2 days ago, Tuesday, you went long some yen stock and then you held it overnight and then you sold it yesterday morning. talk about the Chinese theme for Inner Circle. You've been both long, both short, Baba, Yen, Tiger, lots of Futu, lots of, those names paying off big. Talk about this theme, what you guys have been doing.
All right. So out of fairness, we stuck with the theme long for about 2 weeks, right? Where we never got flat. But I pointed and we were long Baba and Yin. For me, those were the two focus names. And I kept shorting Futu every time it got crazy. Then I had a theory, which was, listen, this is fun, but it's insane. And when China opens up, it's such a classic sell the news moment. A lot of us bought FXI puts. Some bought Yin puts. And we opened up, we went down, and I said, okay, now I'm a little bit more comfortable buying these. So we've continued to stick to the theme on aggressive pullbacks we bought. 2 days ago, early in the week, we had that pullback. We bought some Yen, we bought some Baba. We bounced quite a bit yesterday. I sold some, didn't sell all, wish I did because we had an aggressive pullback. Overnight, we've now sold off. Here's where it gets a little bit more murky. And what I tell everyone is this, listen, it's been golden. We've killed it in China. Like literally, I probably made well over 20 points in a week just over the past week because every dip we bought and bounced 5. I mean, everyone knows how it's been trading. Now it's not so simple. It's not fluid, and we're breaking levels and making new recent lows. So I'm not trying to be a hero. I'd like to see today be close to a bottom. I also believe that fellow you may have heard of, David Tepper, when he said buy everything, I don't think he's just selling it because he said, I hope it pulls back. I'll buy some. I kind of felt the same way. But when it happens, you never feel quite as good about it. My thought is I'm trying to take out the noise. And here's what I know. I know that after 30 years, monetary policy almost means more than anything, right? And you don't fade policy. And China is doing everything under the sun to try and put a bottom in their economy and make things better. So I think the wind's at our back as long as you don't go too big. And here's what I mean by that. I'm never going to put the focus of my fund or tell anyone to put the focus of their money in a Chinese stock. After all, it's a communist country that is not a fan of our country. So I'm always going to say focus on Nvidia and a million other things, but I do think it's a very investable theme for the short term that probably has not finished. I think their economy has a shot to come back from the dead, and I think their government has, for the first time, shown consistency in wanting to change things. So I think we'll hear from Tepper again on the bullish side. I think we'll continue to hear from the government. I added some long-term Baba calls today. I didn't buy stock. I bought some calls for December to buy myself some time, and I bought a little bit of Yen here. And it's worked. Like every pullback we've bought, what I like to tell people is if it finally doesn't work, oh well, I'll be wrong. But we have no shot, unless China goes down like 20% tomorrow, to give back our gains. The key is to kind of acknowledge the weak price action and not get too big here. Because maybe it's over. Maybe I'm wrong. And it's been too good to us. I'm not going to be a hero and size up and Baba here and say it can't go back to 90. Because maybe it does. My job is to make sure we don't give back too much of our profits. So I'm a buyer here, but I'm cautious.
All right, great. All right, you went long MicroStrategy this morning, and you perfectly nailed the bottom of this stock today. You went long this morning. You trimmed half, but then holding the rest, and quite the run since you went long there at 9:35 this morning. What was the strategy on MicroStrategy? And this is obviously the Bitcoin proxy of the market currently.
This is the Bitcoin on steroids, right?
Yeah.
The man is one of the brightest there is. He's arbitraging assets, and he's doing it and killing it, meaning Michael Saylor. So we've been in it. I think the lowest I bought it was like a couple months ago, 122. Been a little frustrated because I sold it way too soon. I've been watching this rally. So bottom line, my best trades, hands down, always are trades where I'm following a theme, an idea, a stock, and I'm waiting for something to happen. And I wait 2 or 3 days and let it happen. And then if X happens, I know to do Y, and usually Z happens. This is exactly what happened in this case. We've seen for the first time have a great lunch. For the first time in a very long time, we've seen MSTR underperform the space, right? Even as Bitcoin was trading pretty well. And some people, including myself, guess maybe that means Michael Saylor is going to do another deal, raise more money, buy more Bitcoin. Maybe it just means it's tired. Whatever it means, it's showing signs of being tired. So let's let it pull back. Where might it pull back? So I mentioned the 10-day. The 10-day yesterday was 188. Today it was up to 192. My thought was this. You looked at the chart, the 10-day was 192, but the next big moving average below 192, the 21-day, was like about 16, 17 points below that, right? So then you have to think, ooh, what do you do, right? Like if you try and be exact and wait for the 21-day, who the hell knows? So I trade with a plan because I'm just not great at reacting. I like to have a plan. So if it's time to react, my plan's set and I can react. So my plan was, if it breaks the 10-day, there's going to be a whoosh. A lot of chartists, technical guys are just going to sell it. They're not going to ask questions. When they're selling it, I'm buying it. I'm buying a half a position, hopefully 185 to 187. And then if I see 170s, I'm buying the other half of the position. Very often I do that because I think best in breed names don't make it easy and go to the 21-day. So I don't try and be exact. Sure enough, I bought half a position. It did not make it easy and go lower. It then ripped up 10, 15 points, and I can't ignore that size of move in minutes, especially because Bitcoin wasn't doing anything, so I sold about half. That was the trade, really taking advantage of fear like we did in Nvidia a few days ago. I don't do it often. I do it in best-in-breed leaders when I feel I have an edge, because I always like to point that out. If you just buy every stock that's getting killed, you will get killed and go out of business. I do this in maybe 1% of my business in best-in-breed leading names where I'm very sure, and I can be wrong, but confident there'll be a bounce. So Nvidia's, MicroStrategy in today's case, and it's worked for 30 years, so I'll stick with it.
Mm-hmm. When it comes to Bitcoin, many have the 70,000 as their target. Really, in the short term, there's a lot of volatility catalyst coming up for Bitcoin. We have the election happening in 2 weeks. 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And of course, the Fed meetings that are coming up in November and December. What are your expectations for Bitcoin and the crypto space?
I think this is going to describe it really well. So I don't want to be long-winded, but I really think it might help newer people that might be watching this. Years ago, when Bitcoin was well under 20,000, I said, listen, I got lucky in art. I got lucky in stocks because I always pay attention to what youth care about because they really decide our future, including clothing. You'd be shocked. Younger category always makes decisions for the older people, even if the older people don't realize it. They set trends. So I said, this Bitcoin thing is the dumbest thing in the world. But what I think doesn't matter. It's the anti-US freedom way to really set the course and take advantage of a new life. That's how I describe it. It's very dramatic. And sure enough, that worked. And I started drinking the Kool-Aid well under 20,000. And I've been long it to some degree always, all the way up here. Now, when the older generation starts to finally agree, like they always do. They do it in fashion, they do it in art, and that's why the prices go up. Okay, so now the older generation is caught up. Even Jamie Dimon with all his products centered around Bitcoin. There's usually a slowdown, right? Like it's no longer as rare or special. And some people get bored and you build longer term bases. And then eventually when everyone thinks, oh, it's over, then it goes. I think we're in that period. And I think we've been in that period for several months. So here's what I do. I just buy it when it's ugly. I don't overchart it. So I think it was a week or two ago, Bitcoin got to 59,000. There was no moving average there to really suggest it couldn't go lower. I thought it might go to 55, 56. Or I thought it might bounce. I said, oh, I got to buy some more. I need more exposure. I don't have enough. So I think IBIT was 33 something and I bought a bunch. Now it's 38, right down a little bit. That's how I trade Bitcoin. I try not to be too exact. I know the theme's intact. My gut is it's 100,000 before the end of the year. I think because so many people think that it won't be easy. I think it'll have to have some shakeouts and drive some people nuts, maybe like Nvidia's doing right at 140. But I think it happens. But often crowded trades don't happen as efficiently as we'd like. You know, like how everyone said small caps would go higher. What happened? We had some weak economic numbers. Small caps went lower. Now we've had stronger economic numbers, less chance of rate cuts or as many rate cuts, and now small caps have gone higher. That's the way the market works. Crowded trades, they make you pay for it and don't make it easy. I think same thing with Bitcoin. I think we go much higher. I just think maybe it's a little crowded and everyone's looking for the same thing. So you have to be a buyer of dips and not just get excited at 68, 69,000 and say, I'm all in, it's going straight up, because it probably will.
All right. All right. So David is, of course, a real trader. So I want to let him get back to the inner circle and working with his traders. But if anyone who's with us live is interested in applying to work with David, you can go to t3live.com/dp, fill out your application for the inner circle. It's a screenshot from the room, some recent comments on what David has done for traders there. Never in my trading journey would I have made those trades on Tesla. The old me would not have taken my profits yesterday or followed your trade today. So the inner circle is, of course, about big trade ideas, but also about transforming people as a trader and making them a better money manager as well. So David, have a great rest of your day and end of your week, and everyone else as well.
Thank you for redoing this instead of Tuesday. I know I've been less available.
He's been busy, yeah, but we'll be back on Tuesday as usual. So
sounds good. Have a great day, everyone.
You too.